Welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode of Coach Larry's podcast. I'm Coach Larry, and with me today, my special guest is Lacrosse Coach Andrew Williams. Andrew, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me, Coach Larry. It's always a pleasure chatting it up with you.
I was thinking, now this is time number 3 on the show.
Oh yeah,
I was going to say third time with a hat trick. We gotta make it a memorable performance here.
You know it.
So obviously, with you on the show today, we're going to talk a lot of lacrosse. But before we get into that, I have to say congratulations. Your Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl champions. Now, obviously, they were a good team coming into the year. Did you expect them to do as well as they did?
I mean, I don't know about expect. I mean, the way that I guess it'd be the 23 season. I guess the way the 23 season ended, it was just so frustrated with the team and just like the downward spiral that they took. So, obviously hoping to clear up that kind of stuff, and then having those, 2 defensive rookies come in, Quignon and Cooper DeJean, having them come in was going to be really nice. And so I assumed they would do well. And then everyone was like getting really, really frustrated after going 2-2 going into the bye. And there were talks of firing Sirianni.
I was going to say.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, they brought it together, turned it around, and just, never looked back. And it was kind of like, I think it was the 2023 season when the Bills were right there as well. And I was really hoping it was going to be Bills and Eagles, or maybe that was 2022. But I was just reading somebody's predictions for this season, and they were like, yeah, Bills, Eagles, Super Bowl. And I'd be the happiest person in the world if that were the case. And I'm completely fine if the Bills win it too, because that would be the only time where I'd have to pick one or the other, and the Eagles got 2, the Bills have none. I'd love for the Bills to get a Super Bowl win, and I'd be fine if the Eagles lost to the Bills in the Super Bowl.
Listen, I love that answer. And I'm not going to lie, I was, especially when it got down to the AFC, NFC championship games, I would have loved to see an Eagles-Bills Super Bowl, just for the fact that the other Bills opponents were, you had the Cowboys twice, the Redskins once, the Giants once. It would have completed the, Bills Super Bowl of the AFC East versus NFC East.
Mm-hmm.
But their defense wasn't complete last year. I like the way that they made some changes this year. I like what they did during the offseason and in the draft. But Philadelphia was just, like you said, slow start. But man, once they got it going, they were just like a juggernaut. And if you looked at their roster from like top to bottom, it was like, holy cow, like try to find a weakness.
Yeah, everybody keeps talking about Jalen Hurts, and it's like, oh, well, he's not a top 10 quarterback. He's just a product of having people around him. And it's like, okay, but like AJ Brown kind of needs somebody to throw him the ball. And like, he's obviously where he is, part to Jalen. Is Saquon really having 2,000 yards without Jalen's running abilities? Like, it's just wild to think that he's just somebody that is on a good team surrounded by good players. Like, no, he's the man. And it's so scary. And then all this stuff with the Super Bowl, and they're like, oh, you didn't wear the ring. It's like, I moved on. Did you hear that? Did you hear that part?
No, I was going to say, I didn't hear. What was it? What did he say? So
the ring ceremony, they all got their Super Bowl rings, and everyone's taking pictures with it. And then some interviewers asked Jalen, they said, in the videos and the pictures, you're not wearing the ring. Have you tried it on? Like what? And he's like, I've moved on.
I love that answer.
Just like cold as ice. Just like, I moved on.
I love that answer.
Yeah.
And I hate when people bring up like, oh, he's a systems quarterback. He's a systems quarterback. Any quarterback could win in that system. That is such a ridiculous answer, especially a player like Jalen Hurts, where there were a lot of times where he can, if the pocket breaks down, if the play breaks down, he can move. He's mobile. And he can, whether he's doing it with his legs, whether he's holding into the pocket or buying more time that he can get the ball downfield. I always found that excuse to be just so disrespectful. Oh, anybody can win in that quarterback. I guarantee you, if you put me at the quarterback spot for the Eagles, they don't win a single game. Like, it's like, stop with that garbage. Oh, anybody could play in that. No, You put Trent Edwards, you put JP Laws, you put any of those quarterbacks in that Eagles team, they're not winning the Super Bowl.
Don't disrespect JP.
Were you a JP Losman fan?
No, I wasn't around Buffalo at that time. I've just heard like little bits and pieces of like the JP Losman lore.
That was a debacle. I was excited that draft because I thought we were one or two picks away. I thought we were going to get Ben Roethlisberger. That was the guy I wanted.
Wow. Okay.
And then I think Pittsburgh snagged him, I don't know, one or two picks, I think, before us. But I was excited. I was like, all right, we're going to get this kid, could be good. And then nope. And then we ended up with JP. And, the rest was, whatever. Moving on. So obviously, as a teacher, I'm hoping you're enjoying the summer, relaxing, just hanging out with the family, all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah, it's been nice. My wife and I are both teachers, and so we still have little things going on and whatnot. It's like teachers don't completely just stop working at all during the summers. So we got little things here and there that we're doing, but yeah, it's nice being able to spend some time with the little kids. And we haven't done any travel or anything. It's just been like homebody stuff, just taking care of the house and some yard work and hitting up the pool every once in a while. And but it's good. It's just a nice little change of pace.
Just typical adulting stuff.
Yeah. Oh, so much adulting. Oh, congrats. I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Just hanging with the family. Back when you were in your, when everybody's in your 20s, it's like, oh man, I went to this concert, I went to this bar, I went to this. But now, once you get in your 30s, 40s, you get into that home family life. It's just, typical hanging around, did some chores around the house, fix this, fix that.
Oh yeah,
such an adulting answer.
The highlight of adulting is like the Saturday morning farmers market.
Oh, absolutely. Come on. And then if there's like a new spot or a new vendor in there, oh my God, that's like conversation for a week. Now you mentioned both you and your wife, Riley, are both teachers. When with you being a coach, you teach third grade,
fifth grade.
I
was third. But
okay.
Yeah, I shifted up to fifth, and then just due to some like teacher movements and whatnot, that's pretty much my permanent spot now, which is nice. I like it in fifth.
Beautiful. Now, obviously going from like the elementary setting to coaching high school, like, do you find it kind of difficult to make that change from Mr. Williams in the classroom to Coach Williams on the field, dealing with fifth graders as opposed to dealing with 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th graders?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. Sometimes I ask myself, I'm like, I don't know who's more mature, the fifth graders or like my, graduating seniors. Sometimes it's a toss up, but I think I handle it well enough. There's that like physical detachment of like, I'm in the classroom. And so I leave the classroom and I go to the field or the locker room, and that, physical change, location change, I think helps, kind of the mindset change as well. And then you just get into, I'm not teaching math anymore. I'm not, teaching reading. I'm doing lacrosse. So, mindset shift, and it just kind of clicks for me. It's not really a huge adjustment. I don't have to. I never really find myself, talking about lacrosse players and dumbing things down. Like, okay, boys and girls, today we're going to be focusing on that. Like, there's none of that slip up kind of stuff. But it's a good balance. I think it's a good change of pace. Seeing all the different age groups.
No, absolutely. I know. I teach K to 8 phys ed in Buffalo, and then I coach now in Niagara Wheatfield. And it's funny because some of the times, if we're having like a little bit of a tougher practice, if we've got 2 or 3 days where there's no games, I'll try to sneak in a little extra conditioning during the season. And sometimes the girls will look at me and I'll be like, all right, we're doing wind sprints. We're doing this on the field. And they'll look like, Coach, did you have a bad day at school? Like, did you have to yell at a kid? Like, are you like, no? Or sometimes I'm like, yeah, and I'm going to take it out on you. We're going to have, it's just a fun dynamic. And it does take a little bit of time to kind of just learn how to switch from elementary to high school. But don't get me wrong. There's times where I'll bring, for warm-ups, instead of doing 2 laps or whatever, but like, all right, we're playing a game of tag for warm up. Let's go. 2 people taggers. And it's, I think sometimes just incorporating that little bit of elementary stuff into a high school, setting for coaching. The kids love it. You break the ice a little bit, and it's just a lot of fun.
You know what? We do sharks and minnows with the first and
Love
second
it.
graders. I may have to make that an occasional warm up for the varsity team.
Oh, absolutely.
Little sharks, little hungry hippos, practicing
Okay.
your ground balls. I did that with the first and second graders, so maybe we can do a little bit of that for the varsity team as well.
I'm telling you, my girls love it. I remember the first time I did it, I'm like, all right, you guys are taggers, put on the penny. They kind of looked at me like, oh my God, coach has lost it. Coach has had a stroke. Coach is like, he's done. But after, the first time doing, and after a game of 5-10 minutes, they're like, all right, I remember one of my captains was like, coach, this is more of a warm up than we usually do. I'm like, yeah. It's like, just have fun with it. And then we did our stretches and we got, you get down the business. Sometimes you just need to break that monotony a little bit.
Yeah, no, sounds great.
Now we, and I think we talked about this last time, but let's get into this a little bit more. So you coach field lacrosse, correct? That's what it's called. And that's 11 on 11, counting a goaltender?
No, the goalie makes it 10 on 10.
10 on 10. Okay. And then indoor, like what you see the Bandits play, that's box lacrosse.
Yes.
And that's more of hockey, where it's 5 on 5 plus a goalie.
Yeah, it's the same numbers as hockey.
Okay. First of all, have you played both in your career? Because I know you were a former player, obviously played high school, college. Did you play box lacrosse as well growing up? And can you tell us a little bit of the difference of both, I guess?
I played a little bit of box, but it was mainly as an adult. I wasn't really exposed to it much. So coming up to Buffalo, there's a men's league called ULAX, and they had some box leagues. And so I've played a couple of winter sessions there. And it's a lot of fun, very, very intense, I'd say the big differences are in the field game. Obviously, with being 10 on 10, it's a stretched out field. It's essentially the size of a soccer field. Slight differences, but essentially the same kind of thing. And in that, you have more specific positions. The field's kind of split in half, and you have to keep a certain number of players in the attacking side and a certain number of players in the defensive side. So you'll have attackmen who stay, in the attacking half of the field. You'll have defenders with the goalie on the defensive half, and then you'll have midfielders going back and forth. Whereas in box lacrosse, like you see with the Bandits, all 5 of those guys, they can go up and down wherever. Now, some of them will focus more on defense, and when the ball gets up on offense, they'll sub off. And some of them will focus more on offense, like the Josh Burns and the Dane Smiths, those kind of guys. And then the box lacrosse is definitely more physical. And I find that very interesting up here in Buffalo because everybody's so focused on the Bandits because of their just dominance. And then they come to field lacrosse or they try to play field lacrosse and they try to have the same sort of intensity. And we got to be bring it down a little bit. Some of the physicality of box lacrosse is just insane. You'll see guys just lumberjack chopping someone's arm off, and the refs are just yeah, it's good. Keep playing.
Yeah, it can get kind of intense there.
Yeah, there's it's a lot of picks, kind of like basketball. A lot of picks in box lacrosse, but it's not just standing still. You'll see someone like Ian McKay, he'll just kind of run, shove somebody in the back, and then turn away and put his stick up and try to catch the ball. And that's okay setting a pick there. Whereas field lacrosse, you can set picks and whatnot, but it's a lot more so I'm on offense, you're my defender. I'm going to try to make, 1, 2, 3 moves and try to run past you and shoot it myself. So aside from that, I mean, basic gameplay, get the ball up, pass to your teammates, shoot in the back of the net. Same kind of stuff there, essentially. But there's a few other nuances as well.
Now, how's the subbing situation? I know I guess I'd compare it between indoor soccer and regular outdoor 11 on 11 soccer, where outdoor soccer, you're making at the professional level, you're making, I think, 4 subs a game. That's it. At the high school, you're letting your starting 11 play. You might make a sub here or there for a couple minutes. Whereas indoor soccer, it's very much like hockey, where it's very much like, all right, you go out for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, boom, you're off, wrestle it. Like, it's constant line changes. Is that kind of how it is? Box lacrosse versus field lacrosse, where box lacrosse you're making a lot more subs, as in field lacrosse not as many?
Not necessarily. I'd say in box lacrosse there are a lot of subs, because when you're on offense, you kind of want like all 5 of those guys to be offensive minded. Maybe you have one that's called like a transition guy, and he can get back and play defense if you need him to. But for the most part, when the ball gets up on the offensive end, they're pretty much getting like all 5 of those guys off and getting 5 offensive minded guys on. And then when the ball gets turned over, they're trying to get most of those offensive guys to sub off and get defensive minded personnel onto the field.
Okay.
So it's like, and it's a 30-second shot clock in box lacrosse. So like Josh Byrne, he'll be on for 30 seconds and then he's getting off if they don't get the shot off. And then he'll be on for the next 30 seconds when they get the ball back. Field lacrosse, you're still subbing on the fly, but my 3 attackmen will probably stay on the field the entire game.
Really?
Yeah. And then my 3 defenders and my goalie, they'll stay on the field the entire game. And it's my midfielders that'll sub off, whether I do kind of the more position focused, where I'll have guys sub on as midfielders to play offense. And then when the ball goes on the defensive side, I'll sub them off and get some defensive personnel on. Or you have kind of like 2-way midfielders, kind of like, you would consider in soccer, like they're playing up and back. But then, they go up on offense, come back on defense, they're probably pretty gassed. So I would sub them off and get a fresh guy or 2 on for them. So everything's on the fly. But you're still doing a lot of subs, especially the midfielders in the in field lacrosse.
Okay. So that's interesting. That especially with the middies, that it's a lot more subbing. I know with soccer, it kind of depends. I mean, if you get a forward who's made a good couple runs, you might want to give them a little bit of a breather. But I guess typically your midfields in soccer are the ones that you're doing a lot of running, getting a lot of subs. In the background there is my dog Bella. Oh. So she's she from now every so often she'll make an appearance on the podcast in the background.
Hey, it's all good.
But sorry, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, do you guys have sub limits in high school soccer? Like, I know that you can only have like so many subs in like pro or Olympics, right?
Yeah. No, in high school soccer, you can make as many subs as you want. Really, you've got to wait until your team has the throw in or off a corner or a goal kick. So you can't really sub them on the fly, which honestly I would love. Like I wish soccer, especially high school soccer, but soccer in general, I wish they would do more of the subbing on the fly.
And see, it can create quite an advantage, because in field lacrosse and box lacrosse too, like the substitution area is very wide. In box lacrosse, like the hockey arena, it has the 2 doors for the bench.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have guys come off the near door, and then new guys are going on in the far door. So that's why when you watch box lacrosse, you'll think that a guy has like a breakaway, and then all of a sudden there will be a defender right in front of him. It's because they got that, I don't know, 15 yard jump. And it's the same kind of thing in field lacrosse. The substitution box used to be 20 yards wide. And so you would have a guy sub off at, it's like, it'd be considered the 40-yard line on a football field. And then the new guy's coming on at the other 40-yard line. So you get a 20-yard jump like that. And you would use that in the clearing game. Like, goalie's got the ball, looks up, fresh guy jumps on, you hit him, he's wide open. So I could see that in soccer too, like kind of, playing around with substitution. You get off, get a new guy on, and then, give him a little through ball, or, switch the field over when you're subbing. Be an interesting little wrinkle.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you brought that up, because in indoor, you can absolutely switch on the fly, and you'll get that kind of same thing too, where you'll get a defender coming off. If you're making a transition, the defender coming off as you get the forward going on to the other side of the field, quick break, quick chance for a breakaway. So definitely could be a lot of fun. Now, when I did indoor, indoor now they have sometimes where they have the 9v9 indoor. I love the traditional old school 5v5 indoor plus a goalie. So it was a lot like box lacrosse, a lot like hockey. We played, that's what I grew up playing at Sportsplex when I did indoor. And man, it was so much fun. I loved playing both, grew up learning the outdoor game. 11 on 11, I started indoor lacrosse probably when I was a little later in life, probably like 9 or 10 or 11. But it was just so much fun. I mean, the fact that you bring in the boards, you can, make wall passes.
Oh yeah.
Okay, you're not supposed to check, but let's be honest,
a little
little bump and never hurt anybody.
Yeah.
It was like a totally different animal. And I remember playing with some guys. I was always I guess if I had to say, I was a better outdoor player than indoor, but pretty consistent in both. But you had guys that I would play with that they were great indoor players. You put them on the outdoor field, were like mediocre. They'd be like a 10 player on an indoor field and maybe like a 6 or 7 on the outdoor field, or vice versa. You'd have guys on the indoor field that were phenomenal player, or sorry, in the outdoor field, phenomenal players. You put them in an indoor game, not so good. Do you kind of see that with the lacrosse game, or is it pretty much like, if you're a good box player, you're going to be a good field player, and vice versa?
So nowadays you see a lot of traditional field lacrosse players going to play box. Some of the biggest recruits out of high school in college right now are playing box lacrosse up in Canada.
Okay.
Lacrosse is Canada's national sport, actually, not hockey, which a lot of people don't realize.
Which I'm shocked every time I hear that.
Yeah, well, lacrosse, it's a French word, and it comes from the French Canadian influence. There's a Frenchman in Canada who kind of saw the game being played by the natives and developed the term lacrosse because of the shape of the sticks. But yeah, you'll see a lot of field players going to play box because it adds a slightly different element. It requires a tremendous amount of stick work, and just a different level of it that really comes into play, and then adds just some additional offensive schemes. Like I said, the picking, a pick and roll can be super effective in the field game because the defenders have to communicate through it. And so you do see a lot of field players adding that box element into their game to kind of diversify a little bit their skill sets. You do see some traditional box players. A lot of the Canadians that are playing traditionally grew up playing box, and then they'll make the transition to field. Some of them hit it off really well. Like Josh Byrne was a phenomenal player in the field game. After having grown up, playing box and being so successful for the Bandits. There are some that just prefer box the way it is. Obviously, it's a smaller field, just slightly different style, and they just take to that better. And then, when it's spread out a little bit more in the field game, they're not as equipped for it, or they're just not just don't prefer it. And then defensively, there's a difference because in field lacrosse, those defenders can have what we call long poles. So their sticks are actually 6 feet long. Whereas in box lacrosse, everybody's sticks, offense, defense, transition, are all the traditional length. So you got some guys that are used to playing defense, with a regular lacrosse stick, and then they go into the field game and they're supposed to be playing defense with these bigger sticks, and they may not be used to it. So it's a little bit of personal preference and just feel a different bit of style, but I do think the styles can mesh very well. You got some field players who were primarily field, and then they kind of make their way into the box game and have made a pretty good name for themselves doing that as well. So I think both together can complement themselves, and you do got some of those guys that are studs at both, like Tom Schreiber. Graduated from Princeton, and he plays for the Toronto Rock, phenomenal box player, but he's traditionally a field player, and they call him Captain America because he was like the only American on the Toronto Rock, and he was just really good. You kind of have to be the only American on a team full of Canadians. But yeah, there are some players who they figure it out in both, the nuances of both, and it works really well. And then yeah, you do got those guys that just they're so used to one, and it's just they just can't break into the other.
Oh, that's awesome. And then Bella in the background was barking, and she was asking, she wanted me to ask you, what did you play when you were on the field? And then the limited time that you played in box, what did you play when you played the box?
So I I kind of started late, so I actually didn't play in high school. I picked up the stick in college, and just the
Really?
yeah, and just being like a hockey player and an athlete, I was kind of able to pick it up, and from freshman through senior year, just kind of get better and better and better. And I was able to start my senior year, but I was a midfielder. I'd run up and down and play a little bit of offense and defense, but dodging players in the open field, like being able to like juke them, and that wasn't my specialty. I just didn't have like the reactiveness to be able to do that. So, but I had really good hands, as they say, and I was able to catch pretty much like anything that would come my way. I could catch it. So my coach moved me to attack, and I would hang out around the crease, and guys would throw me a pass to the inside, and I'd be able to catch it and put it in the net. Or I had a couple of rebound goals that hit off the goalie, I'd scoop it up and put it in the net. So I was definitely more of an offensive minded player. And then in box lacrosse, you see that those goalies are so padded up like a hockey goalie, and the net's a lot smaller. And I couldn't get the ball in the net. And I actually liked the physicality of the defense better. So I actually prefer playing defense in box. And I'll go up and play offense if I need to, but I like playing defense in box better. And then I've actually started playing a little bit more defense in like my men's leagues and just pick up games, just trying to get a better understanding for it so I can coach my players a little bit better and kind of, when I tell them to do something, I can know firsthand why that works or why this thing isn't going to work. So yeah, I was primarily more of like an offensive player, and I still like playing a lot of offense in the field game, but I've tried out a little bit of defense more so as of lately.
Now, talk a little bit about how was it making that transition from like even from hockey to lacrosse, especially like you said, really didn't play lacrosse in high school, picked it up for the college game. I mean, obviously the difference between ice and being on a field, but even a hockey rink really isn't that big as compared to a lacrosse field when you're playing field lacrosse. So was that a huge transition from like hockey to lacrosse, or did you was it fairly easy to pick up?
For me, I thought it was easier to pick up. I think biggest the biggest thing for guys figuring out lacrosse is the lacrosse stick. Like just being able to handle it, pass and catch. While you're running down the field, what are you doing? You got to cradle the ball so it doesn't fall out. And I think hockey players just naturally have those soft hands, and I think that helps with getting a good feel for the ball in your stick. You kind of have to treat your lacrosse stick as just an extension of your body. And I think that's more of a natural transition for hockey players if I were to pick out of any sport. And I think that's the big hurdle for people to get over. A lot of times when you see people try out lacrosse for the first time, they look really awkward, like holding the stick in their hands and not sure how to pass with it or hold it or run around with the ball in their stick. And hockey players have just a better understanding of that. I think when it comes to like endurance and whatnot, soccer players, I think, make really good midfielders just because they're able to run and have that endurance. Basketball players make really good defenders because the schemes and defensive concepts are very, very similar. My JV coach is also a basketball coach and a former basketball player as well. And a lot of that defensive scheme just flows seamlessly from basketball to lacrosse. So I think there's a lot of sports that can help you into lacrosse, but if you're an athlete, which I mean, I was, and you can figure out the passing and catching and just being comfortable with the stick in your hands, I think that helps. And so because being a hockey player and being athletic myself, I think it was a pretty natural transition for me.
What was the thought process? Like, why the switch from hockey to lacrosse? Like, was it?
It wasn't really a switch.
So I was a roller hockey player. My parents did not want to pay for ice hockey because it was
Which
so
can be
expensive.
expensive. Yep.
And my high school actually, I'm from the Pittsburgh area, is where I went to like elementary and high school, and they actually had a roller hockey, like a high school roller hockey league. And so that's what I played all through like elementary school, middle school, high school. I was a roller hockey player, and I actually chose my college, Grove City College, partially because they had a roller hockey team. They had a club hockey team, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. I get to go. I get to get a good education. I get to play roller hockey. This is great. And then when I got there, my floor was kind of broken up into two halls. They kind of made an L, and I had a couple of guys on my floor who were lacrosse players, and then the two RAs on the adjacent hall were on the lacrosse team as well. And at that time, the team was just not large. They had low numbers, and they just needed athletes. And I had picked up a stick in high school, just like throwing around with my dad in the backyard. And I guess that came up in conversation somehow, and they just knew from just talking to me and being around me, and intramural ultimate frisbee, just that I was an athlete. And they were like, hey, you should try this out. I was like, I don't want to. Maybe next year. Like, no, you got to try this out. And I was like, why not? And my parents were all for it. It was a club team, so you kind of had to like pay to play. We had to kind of fund ourselves. Our school wasn't really super supportive at that time, and so they were fine with helping me raise the money to play. And it gave me something else to do. I made a lot of friends there, and that was one of my best memories of college, was just joining the lacrosse team, meeting all those guys, just developing the camaraderie through that.
That's awesome. Now, was it, obviously, I'm sure you took to, a lot of the older guys and kind of tried to learn as much about the game and as much about the positions and stuff from them. But was there like a core group of freshmen or guys in your class that you kind of went up the ranks with, or was it just a pretty much of a hodgepodge type of deal?
No, there were, I guess when all was said and done, there were four of us in my class. When I graduated, there was four of us. There were a couple other guys in my year that kind of came in and left and whatnot. But yeah, when I joined, there were two other guys on my hall that were already like lacrosse players, and they had played in high school, and they were going to play for sure. And then they recruited me my freshman year, and then another one of our buddies from the freshman hall, they ended up recruiting him as well, I think a little bit later on. And so the four of us stuck together. But the thing about my school, it was just a small private school, and we just developed a really good camaraderie across the entire team. And you always have those guys that are making the freshmen do everything, but for the most part, like, I liked hanging out with the seniors, and the seniors didn't mind being around the freshmen. And our RAs were juniors at the time, so we got to spend 2 years with them. They were close with us because they were our RAs, and we had developed that relationship. But yeah, it was a good camaraderie. And then senior year, just being with those three other guys for the entire time was a really cool thing.
Now, before we transition to the next thing, I can attest to you being a great athlete, and I'm gonna test your memory here.
God.
I don't know if you remember, way back, this would have been a number of years ago. I think you know where I'm going with this. The canoe race.
I knew it. Yep.
The canoe race, or the kayak race, the counselor kayak race at the park camp. How you're 30 years old, 31. How old are you now?
I'm 34 right now.
34. I'm 10 years older. I'm 44, turning 45 soon. And first round, I had my match against, I forgot who it was, but I beat them. I was, at the time, I probably would have been early 30s. I was gassed. You, the young buck, 20-something-year-old, came in there, won your first round match, and we met in the second round. Not to make any excuses, but I'm like, I just remember going to Rob McKee and be like, I don't even want to get in the water. Like, I am gassed. I'm tired. I'm sped. You went in there and just destroyed me out of the water. In fact, you won the whole thing for the guys, right?
I won the whole thing 2 different years, I think.
Were you back-to-back champion?
I didn't, not back to back, because I didn't come back. Like
Oh, that's right. You had a middle year. Like you
yeah,
did one, took one off, and then
because of grad school, I couldn't do it. But yeah, year one, I won the whole thing. I forget the last name, but Mike.
Manisol.
Yeah, he was like the favorite, and I went up against him, and I was like, I don't think I'm gonna make this happen. And somehow I pulled it out. I could not, like, the thing about like kayaking and canoeing, like, it kills your wrists. And I just remember for days after, I'm like, I can't do anything with my hands because my wrists were just so fried. And then I took that next year off because of grad school, and then I came back for my second year, and I was like, I got to do this again. And I was really trying, really try hard for that one. And I think, if my memory serves me correct, I won it again.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I remember. In fact,
I don't think I got all three. I don't think I got three.
But no, I remember that, and it was funny. The first one, I wanted, somebody had dropped out. That was the only reason I was in there, because I remember I'm like, no,
Okay.
you got a lot of young kids. Let them do it. I do enough. I do sumo. I do all that. I don't need to be in the water. Not a huge fan of the water. I forgot who I beat in the first round, and I'm like, and I literally gave it my all, and I'm like, I'm just done. Because it's a different animal. You put me on a soccer field, I could run all day long. You put me on lacrosse, or not lacrosse, on cross country. I used to run cross country. I could run all day long. But with that upper body, it was all upper body. I'm like, oh God, I'm gassed. And I felt every bit of my age. Going into that next round, I was like, Jesus Christ, I feel like I'm 75 years old. Like, just somebody get me off. But it was just a lot of fun. And it was for the kids. And
yeah,
it was good times. All right, so we'll use that as a little bit of a transition. Now, speaking of that, you've got 2 young girls at home. You were saying they're age 2 and 4.
They will be 2 and 4 at the end of summer, turn of fall. So yeah, they're 3 and 1 right now. But yeah, two little girls, girl dad.
Now, are they kind of? We talked a little bit about they're kind of getting into sports, or the older one you had some tennis, a little tennis weekend.
Yeah, so we live in the town that my wife grew up in, and so she knows all the ins and outs and everything. And she grew up in this summer tennis program, so it's relatively cheap. It's like $25, and they have it every day of the summer, and you can just show up whenever you want. I think is the details. And so I'm like, yeah, that's totally fine. And so we we put them in it, and they call it munchkins, and it's just basic stuff. It's like, all right, we're gonna do little stretches, we're gonna run to the base, from the baseline to the net, just getting them down, the terminology down, and the different spots on the court, and just making them enjoy being out there and whatnot. Do a lot of picking up the ball and throwing it over the net, that kind of stuff. Just the idea, some basic concepts, and they've kind of just started getting into all right, we're gonna actually hit the ball. But it's just it's socialization, it's listening, following directions, having fun, being outside. And it's funny. My older daughter, she did it her first year. Loved it. I kind of had to help her a bunch, and then the second year she lasted 2 sessions and cried the entire time. And I'm like, I'm not bringing you back. She refused to do anything. So I'm not having you sit here and just cry the entire time. So we didn't go back. And then this year we knew that having her little sister in would help out. And so she's definitely gotten a lot better. She likes being out there. My littlest one, she's having a little bit of trouble, sitting still and following the directions. So, we'll get there with her. But yeah, they're both pretty interested in athletics. We got these little mini lacrosse sticks. They like picking those up and throwing them around. We got a soccer ball. They like kicking the soccer ball. They got they'll be throwing stuff into a basket inside the house, trying basketball. I just got a portable I got out my portable disc golf basket, and they like taking the discs and they were trying to put them into the basket. all different kinds of like activities and stuff they're enjoying. So we'll see what they end up picking for sure. I don't know. I'm kind of the mindset of I almost want them to find something that I either don't know a lot about, or even like I kind of hate to say it, but like don't like. If it's something I don't know a lot about, then I can kind of just sit back and just kind of like enjoy. Whereas I'm afraid that if they go into some like a sport that I know a lot about, I'm going to be like super nitpicky about their performance, and kind of hard to separate between like a proud dad and a coach. So yeah, we'll see what they end up doing. I don't really want to pressure them into lacrosse. Girls lacrosse is like we could spend so much time on the differences between men's and girls lacrosse, but like so girls lacrosse is different enough as it is. But yeah, I'd almost rather them go into something that I am not as well versed in, just so I can just sit back and say, yeah, you did great. It was really fun, watching you out there.
Oh yeah, you can be the cheerleader,
Yeah.
and you can almost kind of learn the sport together.
Oh,
Learn
yeah.
the sport together with your girls as they're learning it. It's a lot of fun, and I tell you what, my daughter Sarah, she was a cross country runner, track and field runner. She also did basketball during the winter, and I remember it was fun. She had the little league basketball games, and when she was 5th, 6th grade, she's going through there. I think they played like games on Saturdays, but then when she got into modified and then the JV, it was great to see her go. But I remember one game, I think it was a JV game, one of her first games. It was a home game, so it's at Clarence Gym. She's playing or whatever, and the referee made what I thought was a bad call, and I just, not super loud, but I just remember like, oh, that's garbage. The look I got from her on the court, like she just literally just like, are you kidding me? Like, and I'm like, and from that point on, I'm like, yep, you're right. I constantly complain about those parents. You're right, my bad. And from there on out at games, it was just, hey, good job, great job, like nothing negative. And I feel like, and I think you'll learn that too, where you have to go from kind of like we talked about, going from coach to from teacher to coach. You have to go from coach back to parent. You have to you can cheer, you can be vocal, but it's got to be positive. It's got to be just great job, because you get some of those parents that if you're in the coaching game long enough, you see some parents that drive some athletes away because it's they can be a little too intense.
For sure.
And I never wanted to be one of those parents. And hey, I got shot that death stare from the court, and I'm like, okay, lesson learned, my bad. And I had to apologize the next day, like, sorry, Sarah, sorry. So it was, it's a learning experience.
Yeah, and I think on the spectator side, I won't have an issue. I've seen enough games and like heard parents yelling to know like, yeah, like no, that was a fine call. That like, yep, that was the appropriate call in that situation. Like, I know I'm not going to do that. It's more so the like come home after practice, like, oh, Daddy, how'd I do? It's like, well, you went for that ground ball and you just had your backhand too high and you completely missed it. And like, no, I don't like that stuff. I don't want that stuff going through my head. I'd rather it be like, oh, I really, you looked like you were having a lot of fun out there. It was really nice seeing you run around. But Dad, I missed like 5 baskets. I'm like, yeah, but you were trying really hard. Like, looks like you got, your good form. And I don't know if she has good form, but like, she's trying out there. Like, that's kind of the part that I'm like, all right, if she does get into something like, lacrosse or hockey, I gotta turn off that coach mode and just be what are those, like, I love watching you play. Like, that's the only thing that needs to be said on the way home. I've heard that from a bunch of people.
Absolutely. Just be the cheerleader, cheerleader parent.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I've told this to Sarah, especially when she was playing. Obviously, with me being, and I'm being generous, 5'6", basketball was not my sport in high school. So my wife says I'm 5'5", but I'm holding with 5'6". So it was one of those things where, I mean, I knew the sport wasn't a favorite of mine to watch, but I knew the rules, knew the sport. Actually coached it for 1 year at Cleve Hill with Doug was not good. Doug was in the pool, but we'll talk about the Manimal. Maybe we'll bring him up later. But so it was a sport that I knew, but I always told Sarah, and especially when she got into track and field, I've coached track and field for years. I let her know, but like, listen, if you want to come up to me for advice, I'm here. If you don't, I'm not, I'm dad. I'm not coach.
Yeah.
If you want me to turn on my coach's helmet a little bit and say, well, you need to work on this on the track. This was a little slow. I can do that, but I'm only going to do that if you come up to me and say, hey, listen, I want to drop my mile time down, or I want to pick up a little speed here. I want to get ready for sectionals. I want to do this. I can do that, but I'm only going to do it and make that switch if you tell me to. And it really does help a lot, because you do get some athletes, and I've seen where some athletes, if their parent is a coach, especially if their parent is playing that sport, I've seen a lot where you see some pretty nasty arguments between coach and athlete, and usually it's parent coach and son or daughter athlete.
Yeah,
it can get nasty.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't want that.
Now we talked a little bit about, like, I guess you've coached. You don't just coach at the high school level, so you've coached lacrosse at all different levels, right? You've coached the little guys, you've coached the older guys. First of all, talk a little bit about the difference between coaching at the different levels, and do you have a preference?
So yeah, I've coached almost every age group. I was hired at Grand Island and started coaching the JV team to cover for a guy who his wife was having twins, needed to take the year off. So I started off JV, and then when he came back, they needed a modified coach. So I was coaching middle school. And then I finally went up to the varsity. But then, being the varsity coach, like it's your program. You got to make sure it's running well, and it's not going to run well in a couple of years if you don't have the little kids, learning about it. So, I started, getting involved with the youth program and making sure that was running well. And I kind of wanted to just like manage it, but inevitably we would never have enough coaches to enough, parent volunteers or, like alumni to come back and help out. So I would end up having to take a team. And for the past 2 years, and I think a year before that as well, I've worked with the outgoing first and second graders. So the kids going into second and third grade. I've been working with them, and it's a big difference, but I've enjoyed it because it's been a change of pace. It's much more relaxed and laid back because there's not as much on the line. It's really getting those basic fundamentals down, just getting the kids exposed to lacrosse and learning what it is and how enjoyable it can be, and just kind of those basic skills. And so I think you brought up before about how you kind of like decompress from the season. I think working with the first and second graders has been a pretty good way to decompress. It's just been I've been able to sit down and play some games with those little kids and really get down into like the nitty gritty stuff. Whereas with like my varsity players, they know how to pass and catch. We're more so focused on like schemes and what kind of sets we're going to be in, and we're going to run certain plays. How are we going to defend? Some of the more higher level stuff. Whereas the little kids, it's like, let's make sure you can pass and catch. Let's work on scooping up our ground balls. Who wants to try being a goalie? Let's all try face-offs. Like just getting them exposed to everything, and it's just a lot of fun and joy happening in those practices and games. So it's been good. I've developed some relationships with those little kids. I've had a couple with a couple of kids I've had for the past 2 years on the same team.
and they're at the elementary school I'm at. So it's cool seeing them, during the school day as well. They're like, "Oh, coach, how you doing?" I'm like, "Hey, bud." Some of them might be in my classroom in 5th grade. And then some of them, hopefully a bunch of them, are playing varsity, when they're 9th, 10th, 11th graders. So it's cool developing those relationships and connections early on when they're super young, so that we develop that trust and that positive relationship moving forward, and watching them grow. Like, there's some kids right now that I know they're going to be studs, and it's going to be really cool to see how they continue to grow and grow, especially if they choose lacrosse, because some of them are going back and forth between baseball and lacrosse, and travel soccer, and I'm in their ear like, "Oh, baseball's lame, so boring. You're just standing there." Like, "Yeah, lacrosse, you get to run around, you're hitting people, it's great." So yeah, it's cool. It's really cool working with the little kids, and just watching them, some of that stuff just click for them, and putting into practice some of the things and the techniques that you teach them. It's really cool when you see that kind of stuff happening.
No, absolutely. And it's funny that you said, like, I'll see this little athlete, and I'm like, "Oh my God, that kid's going to be a stud." And I'll tell my wife all the time, like, especially when Sarah was doing little kid basketball, or even, when I was doing, I've coached every age grade, kind of like you. I've coached the real little guys. I think I went down to 2nd and 3rd grade soccer, did modified, did JV, did varsity. And even during tryouts, our tryouts are coming up in about 3-4 weeks. Man, the summer's almost over.
It's crazy.
But my wife will, like, I'll tell my wife, like, "Yeah, I can tell that kid, give them a couple years, they're going to be a stud, or they're going to be great early on." And she'll look at me, she'll be like, "Really? You just saw them run for a little bit, or you just saw them dribble for like 5 seconds or 5 minutes. Like, how do you know?" And I keep trying to tell her, it's something you just see. You can just see the athletic tools there. You can just see the way that they handle themselves. You can see the way, and this is guys and girls. I feel like it's just something that, if just within 5 seconds, 5 minutes of seeing the athlete on the field, you're like, "Okay, that's going to be my next rock star."
Well, and I think you've had enough experience with the upper end of that, where, like, what the end product is, and so because what it eventually is going to be like, you can see the warning signs ahead of time. Like, I had a conversation with the one dad, and I was like, I've had a couple of kids who were soccer players, and then they started playing lacrosse, and they were midfielders for me. And I just said, like, I think you would be better pplaying, LSM, which is long stick midfielder. And they picked up a long pole, and it just clicked. And, I had this one kid this past summer, and I said to his dad, I was like, I see those two kids. I see what they had in him, and I can just picture that when he gets to that age group where they're allowed to switch to the long poles, I can see him with a long pole. I can see him running up and down the field, playing defense with it, carrying it up on offense. I can just see it. And the dad was kind of like with me on it as well. I had another kid that, he was playing out, and randomly one day he's like, "Coach, can I try goalie?" I'm like, "Sure, why not?" Like, not many kids at that age really want, lacrosse balls shot at them.
Yeah.
So I'm like, "Anybody who wants to try it? Sure, try it out." He got in net, and he's throwing his body all around. And I'm like, "Dude, you're a natural." And his dad comes up to me. He's like, "Oh yeah, he practices in the backyard."
Like,
okay,
good to know.
well, yeah, we probably should have you as goalie the entire time,
Yeah.
So, but some of the kids, it's that innate, just something innate in them that's just like, yeah, you got it. There's some stuff that's just unexplainable. It seems like just that natural ability to do certain skills, and you just know that that's going to translate into something if they stick with it.
And you kind of mentioned it a little bit, and I've been asked before, like, what's the best quality you see in an athlete? For me, 100% hands down, it's coachability. I mean, obviously, you want a kid it's great to have a kid that's got all the tools, that's got the speed, that's got the strength, that's got the agility, that's got the brain for it. But when you can find an athlete that has coachability, everything else can develop. I mean, everything else can fall into place. And I love the fact that you said sometimes you get a kid that, all right, might be out of position, might be playing defense when they should be playing midfield, might be playing attack when they should be doing this. You find that a lot of times in soccer too, where you'll just look at a kid during tryouts. Like I always, in fact, I'll be doing it pretty soon. I'll have tryouts like, all right, defenders over here, midfielders over here, attack or forwards over here, goaltenders over here. I like to try to do some scrimmages or 3-on-2s. And inevitably, I'm always like, you know what? Why don't you, from the defender group, I want you to take a few runs up top, or I want you to go in midfield. And when you're doing it with the little guys, they don't care. They just want to be on the field. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when you get to the JV and the varsity and the high school level, you'll get a little blowback from the athletes sometimes. Like, coach, I've been playing defense my whole career. I've been playing midfield my whole career. And you kind of got to finesse them a little bit. But like, I get it. I understand. But just show me what you got up top. And if you get a little, like, just have fun with it. Go ahead. And by the end, most of them, by the end of that first or second day, they were like, that was kind of fun. Like, and there's been some kids, well, I'll have to have that hard conversation. But like, listen, I've already got my starting 4 defenders. And I've already got my 1 or 2 defenders that are going to come off the bench. I really need some midfield. I really need especially outside midfield. You did very well during the tryouts outside midfield. Now you can stay at defense, but you're probably going to be that 3rd or 4th defender coming off the field, coming off the bench. If you keep progressing at midfield, by the mid-season point, you might be one of my starters. You know, or at the very least, you should be coming off the bench 1st or 2nd. And you kind of challenge your athlete a little bit this way. You play on defense. All right, you might only get 5 to 10 minutes a game. Make the transition to midfield. You might be starting and getting 50, 60, 70 minutes out of 80 a game. So I feel like too, that's where you kind of find the psychology of coaching. You got to find a way to get your kids motivated. And it's almost like, and I've told this to some other people, we've had conversations back in I'm not that old, not that I was coaching back in the 80s or 90s, but as a player in the 80s or 90s, it was very much like a coach could just, all right, you're doing it this way. Why are you doing it this way? Because I said so. Now it's, you got to get into where, all right, you're doing it this way. Let me explain why. Or I'd like you to do this way. Let me explain why. And I think it's just a way better. It's a more, my words are getting jumbled here, but it's a better way of coaching where it's not that dictatorship style of coaching where, now don't get me wrong, sometimes you have to be that, hey, listen, we're running this because we're running this. But I feel like when you can explain to your team and when your team knows the full rationale behind it, you just get better buy-in.
Oh yeah, for sure. And sometimes they don't know what they don't know. One of those kids that I was talking about earlier, after he it was like him graduating as a senior, he came back. I think he either came to me in the summer or one of our alumni games. He was like, "Oh yeah, coach, thanks again." And I joked that oh yeah, it was I'm the reason why you're playing in that position you are. I'm the one that put that stick in your hands. And he was like, no, seriously, you said that I should try this new position and it worked. He got some second team or whatever honors across the section, and he's like, yeah, it's because you said that I'd be good at this position and you let me try it and it worked. So sometimes you just got to expose them to something, and yeah, like you said, share a little rationale behind it, and you tell them what you see in them and how it can benefit them, how it can benefit the team primarily. And yeah, sometimes you get that pushback, but sometimes they're like, okay, coach. And then it clicks and it's just smooth sailing from there. It's really cool when all those light bulbs go off together.
Oh yeah. And don't get me wrong, I'm not like a soccer genius. There's been a few times where I'll be like, why don't you try up and forward? And it'll be a complete dumpster fire. And I'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, that was on me.
We tried it.
My bad. Go back on defense.
Yeah, you gave it the old college try. We're done with that.
But and it's just it. But like you said, when the kid has that click moment, mm-hmm. that aha moment, and I know for me, I mean, I was one of those athletes young on. I was convinced I was going to be a forward. I was going to play, be soccer. I was going to score all these goals up top. thankfully, I had a coach real early on in my career that, even before modified, that got me like, you're a runner. You're a midfielder. You can control the play. You're a center midfielder. I mean, I started on the outside and then moving on the inside, so I control it a little bit more. And he was brutally honest. I think I was at time like 9 or 10. He was brutally honest with me. He's like, you don't have the speed to be a forward. And looking back on it, he was right. He didn't say I didn't have the skill. I just don't have the speed.
Yeah.
On forwards, you have to have speed. You have to be able to get the ball 1 or 2 touches and blow by the defender. I didn't have that speed, but he saw that I was a solid midfielder, somebody that I was a player that let the play develop. I was definitely more of a player where I would get the assist as opposed to the goal. And I had a very solid career because of it. And if I would have been that stubborn player, I probably would have been a terrible forward moving on into the JV levels, the varsity levels. So sometimes you have to have that brutally honest moment as a coach.
Yeah.
And it's not, you're not saying, hey, you stink, you're terrible, get off my field. You're just saying, no, these are your options.
Yeah, it's putting them in a position to succeed and putting the team in, putting them in the best spot to help the team overall. And that's, ultimately, I mean, track and, cross country slightly different, but, it's lacrosse, soccer, hockey, basketball, it's all about the team. And so, you can be selfish, you can do what you want to do, but the team might not succeed doing that. So yeah, it's getting them to understand what's going to be best for them and then ultimately what's going to help out the team.
Yeah, honestly. And it's funny that you brought up track. I remember one year I always coached the throwers, and obviously you have your head-to-head NFL meets where you're just playing against another school. And then you have your championship meets, you have your invites where you're playing against 10, 15, 20 different schools, depending on the size of the invite. I remember we had one, this was back when I was coaching at Kenmore East for their track and field. We had one meet where it was going to be a tight meet. I want to say it was against Ken West. It was going to be a tight meet either way, whoever we were playing. And I knew that they didn't have any throwers. They had like maybe one good thrower. In fact, they weren't for throwing for the events. It's their top 3 versus our top 3. And then top 3 get points. So third place, you'll get a certain amount of points for first, second, or third. And I knew it was going to be that close of a meet where if we got a sweep, we could get, it could be the difference between winning the meet or losing the meet. I literally only had 2 girl throwers at that point. I knew that they only had one and that their best thrower was only their thrower was only throwing like 20 feet, 19, 20 feet. My best thrower could easily beat that. She was throwing over 30. My next best thrower was, again, mid-20s, low 30s, could easily beat that. So I knew we had the 1-2. I literally took one of my hurdlers, gave her, I don't know, maybe a day's practice, but like, listen, throw this. She's like, what? I've never done this. Like, let's just we can get you over 20 feet, I guarantee. And sure enough, she was able to beat that thrower, and it really helped towards to win that game. But it's just something where you got to have the right kid that buys in, and sometimes you gotta think on the fly.
Oh yeah, it's all about thinking on the fly.
Absolutely. Now we talked a little bit about this, but and we don't want to go into the seasons because I know I had a rough season for soccer. I know seasons end the way that they end. But after a tough loss or after a tough season, like how do you kind of cope with that? I know we have the rule here, my wife, and thank God she put it on. If I come home and it's a tough loss, I get 30 minutes. I get 30 minutes to talk about it, 30 minutes to vent about it, 30 minutes to whatever, over, done with. If it's a win, I get an hour. I get an hour to brag about it. I get an hour to talk about it. I get an hour to whatever. And then, okay, because she knows I can go on for days and days and days and days and days talking about it. So we have the 30-minute and the hour rule. But after a long season, there are times where I need to unplug. I don't talk to my assistant coaches, my JV coaches. I mean, you have the banquet, you have all that stuff. But when it's done, it's done. Like, I don't want to hear the word soccer for like 2 to 3 weeks after that. It just takes me that time. I need that time to decompress. How about you? Like, do you have anything that whether it's after a tough loss, tough win, tough season, do you have any things that just kind of get you to just any rituals that just, all right, season's done?
No, I think, I mean, just because of the way that, the lacrosse season's set up, I think I kind of can't escape it, just because, we play in the spring, and then, the spring season for high school is the shortest out of all of them.
Yeah.
And so, we end end of May. If you're going to states, you're playing in June, but we're pretty much done end of May. But then, I gotta go and get the youth program up and running. They're playing in June and July. And then I'm, playing in my own rec league. The varsity and JV guys, they have an opportunity to play in a rec league as well. And so, I'm kind of getting those things organized. Like you said, organizing the banquet, wrapping up all the end of year stuff. Lacrosse is pretty big in the summer with guys traveling to different places and whatnot for tournaments. And so I don't really escape the sport itself too much. But I think, like I said, just that change of pace, getting to play it myself, with my teammates in a men's league, that definitely helps. I'm not on the sideline coaching other people to do it. I'm out there playing. That's a nice little escape for me. And then the change of pace of going from like the high stakes of varsity lacrosse to the lower stakes of just, getting elementary age kids to buy in and enjoy the game. I think that helps. But no, I can't really take just like a complete hands off, get away from it approach. Even in like the fall and the winter, I'm still like, I should be having I should be having fall workouts. I should be having something for the players that have the time and want to come out and get better. There's always something going on, but I think for the most part, even when all of that is still taking place, I'm still kind of able to, take the negative and just kind of like suppress it and kind of just like push it away, maybe a little slowly. But yeah, I don't really take that full like hard stop, just completely remove myself. Maybe I'll try it one of these years. Who knows?
And listen, for me, I love cooking too. Cooking is a great relief.
Oh yeah,
like just a great stress relief. I don't know about you.
I just made a
wife's
really
great
good
cook.
risotto tonight. Phenomenal
Beautiful.
risotto. So
I just made pasta the other night. I mean, my wife is a great cook too, but she's more on the baking side, on the dessert side. I do a lot of the meals. Not that she can't, but I just love cooking. And I think for me too, that's another way that I can just zone out, where I'm just thinking about chopping the vegetables. I'm just thinking about getting the meat right. Whatever I'm making just lets me, for that 30 minutes, hour, whatever I'm making, it just lets me focus on just that. And it's a great stress reliever during the season. Now, you've been coaching quite a while, you've been playing quite a while, whatever the sport is. Do you have a game, whether you played, whether you were as an athlete or whether you were as a coach or both, that just kind of like you'll never forget, whether good or bad? Like, this is like one that I'm going to be 80 years old in a nursing home and still remember this game type of moment. I know for me, as a coach, it was, I remember, and I should have it all. I mean, 2 years ago for Wheatfield, it was phenomenal. We had a great run of the sectional finals, won sectionals, lost in the regionals. We don't talk about that game. But for me, it was one that I'll always forget or always remember at Park. We were, it was my first year really coaching varsity. We had a mediocre season. We were about 5-5, but in the playoffs, we got hot. We went up against West Seneca Christian in the IAC championship game, and we ended up losing 1-0. And I'll never forget this. I had a player, one of my best players, captain. She was my starting center defender. We were 15, 20 minutes into the game, and she had a little issue where she needed to get off the field just for a quick minute. was able to get her off she was only off the field, I want to say 3 minutes. And during that 3-minute time span, they found a way to go through the goal. They went right up the middle, shot scored. That was the only goal of the game. 1-0, we lost. We had a couple great opportunities at the end to tie it. That game, I just always I should have dropped this player back to recover for her better. I should have did this. I should have pinched them in tighter. I should have to this day, every so often it'll pop into my head of things that I should have done differently. So that's a game that I'm sure, like I said, when I get into my 80s and 90s, I'll be babbling incoherently about that game. But do you have any games, and it doesn't have to be as a coach, could be as a player too. Do you have any of those games, whether it's lacrosse, hockey, that just kind of, whether it was the big canoe race?
I'll always remember
any of those?
Always remember the big park camp canoe race. Always.
Do you have any of those games that just kind of stick with you, good or bad, that you always remember?
Yeah, I mean, I think, kind of like you're saying, just as a coach, you have that in you of what could I have done better? How could I have made things different? A lot of times it's the players on the field, they got to execute, they got to do what they got to do, but there's always that well, what could I have done? And I kind of felt that way with, we made us to the section finals against Hamburg, and we ended up losing, which it was a very tough loss. But you look back on it and it was 4-2, which is an insane lacrosse score. So you look at that and you're like, yeah, our defense played great, but what if we just did this? That could have gotten us another goal possibly. Or we had this situation where the seconds were dwindling in the quarter, or I think it might have been the half, and one of my long poles was running it down the field, and I called a timeout with 11 seconds left, and he could have possibly gone to the goal and scored. He could have gotten the ball taken away. I called a timeout. We tried to set up a play. The play didn't work. So it's always that well, what if I just let him go? Would he have scored? Then it would have been 1-1 heading into the half and not 1-0. So we always have those, and that's one that, because it was such a high level, I'll probably always think about that one and what I could have done a little bit differently. But as a player, I'll always remember the game my senior year in lacrosse. So we played in it was a club league, but it was a fairly how do I want to say it? A fairly intense club league. It was the MCLA, and we would call it virtual varsity because it was the situation where the schools did not recognize us as varsity sports. We had to fund ourselves. The schools would sometimes give some of the team's money, but for the most part, you had to fund the sport yourself. But we treated it like a varsity program. I remember we had 5 a.m. practices. We would be doing team lifts, all this stuff. There are some schools that are much better than Division I varsity teams, and it's crazy. And so I was it was MCLA Division II, and our biggest rivals was Dayton University.
Okay.
And they were in our conference. And so we played them every year, and we had never beaten them. They were a very good program. They had won, the whole thing a couple of times. They had a very well-known and respected coach, and they just had a great program. They had some All-Americans and whatnot, and we were just this lowly team from Northwestern Pennsylvania, small Christian college. Nobody really thought twice about us too much. But from my freshman year to my senior year, we were just getting a little bit better. We were bringing in some better players and whatnot. Senior year, we travel out to Dayton. I'm starting attack now. And we get out there, and my coach has, the game plan written up. We know exactly who their scorers are, what they want to do, what their defense does, how we're going to break it. And we go out there and we develop a lead, and we keep the lead, and we end up winning the game. And it was the only time in our school's history that we beat Dayton. they were our rival. Now, like after I had graduated, we had moved up to, we had become a varsity program, and now they're a Division III school, so they're a Division III team now. So they don't play Dayton anymore. But I kind of take that as a badge of pride that we are the only team that beat our rival school, Dayton. And to top it all off, my parents were super supportive. My dad came to every single one of my games, even as a freshman, where I was not playing a second. And it was, the beginning of March, cold, snow everywhere, raining. My dad would come and watch me, just watch the team. And I would be on the bench, and he would just be there and excited to be there. And he'd travel, hours across state lines just to come and watch the team. So super happy to have him. And he was at that game, and I scored a hat trick. And I had maybe gotten one goal throughout freshman, sophomore, junior year, and senior year. I'd had a couple of goals, but like I got 3 goals in that game. And
Wow.
I got a really good picture of one of them, and it was just one of those things where like I got that hat trick, and I remember just that feeling and hearing my dad like just scream my name and turning and just being like pointing at him. And after the game was over, he charged the field, and I like jumped into his arms, and it was just like I had like my best performance. The team had their best performance, and it was just like chef's kiss. It was just awesome, and I'll never forget that game. That was just one of the best.
I love it. That's like your guys' Hollywood story.
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Like I love it. And that's what sports is all about. Whether it's the good, whether it's the bad, it's just evoking that feeling. It's both teams are going in there, giving it their all, and somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose, but it's all about just getting those moments, and making you feel it. There's nothing better than sports. Like there really isn't. You learn so many life lessons, so many just great character builder lessons that you learn. It's awesome. It's what it's all about.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Speaking of what it's all about, we're going to get into every guest's favorite segment, the hot seat questions. And I love it. Sometimes I'll give the guest a little bit of time. Sometimes I won't, but we're just going right in it. We'll do 4. We'll do 2 from me, 2 from you. I'll give you a little bit more time to think. I'll come up with the first one. Now, again, these can be questions about sports, about lacrosse, about anything, about cooking, about life. So the first question I've got for you, if you're starting a pro, I've got pro lacrosse team, but could be pro team of any kind, what would you name it? I'm going to go, and in fact, I came up with this question a while ago. I should have had an answer for it. You'd think I'd be that smart. I think I'd probably go with something off, like for Niagara Wheatfield, it's the Falcons. For when I coached at Kenmore East, it was the Bulldogs. I mean, you have those. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go with a throwback salute to my old high school, Niagara Falls High School. We were the Power Cats. Now they've since combined. They've since combined with LaSalle, so they're the Niagara Falls Wolverines now.
Yeah.
But back when I played, we were the Power Cats. And if you're asking yourself what a Power Cat is, nobody knows. We never knew what the hell a Power Cat was. It was, I guess, our mascot on our jerseys. The best way I could say it is it looked like a lion with a bad hair day. Like it was like a lion, but real fuzzy mane, like real kind of shooting all over the place. But we were a Power Cat. We were the Niagara Falls Power Cats. So I'll bring the Power Cat name back. That would be my pro sports team, the whatever Power Cats.
See, I feel like with all, I can't say with all the pro teams, but I feel like nowadays it's like moving away from like the animals.
True.
And especially with like the professional, lacrosse league, it's called the Premier Lacrosse League. They have some interesting names. They have like the Carolina Chaos. They have like the Utah Archers. They have the Maryland Whip Snakes. Yeah.
Whip Snake?
Yeah. whip is like a lacrosse term with like for the amount of like hold that your
Okay.
stick has, and then just like I don't know why the snake is involved in that, but yeah, it's like they got some wild names. But I think I'm gonna shout out my men's rec roller hockey team, the Honey Badgers.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, when I moved up to Buffalo, my girlfriend at the time, she introduced me to a bunch of her high school buddies, and they were all playing hockey together, and they had me join in. And then from that team, I got connected with like an offshoot team, and they were called the Honey Badgers. And we kind of just like we got some custom jerseys, and we just kind of developed some friendships through that. And so it was just interesting. And so I'd go with the Honey Badgers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. I like that. All right. Do you have a question, or should I go on to my number 2?
So I just thought of something. And have you ever done the blind rankings?
Okay. Yeah.
You know where I'm going with this? I'm gonna
Kind of, sort
I'm
of.
gonna give you 5 things, and I want you to blindly rank them. 1 being the best, 5 being the worst. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So I found from ChatGPT, not a sponsor.
Could be. We're always looking for
Yeah,
sponsors.
could be. Why not? Just a list of Buffalo wing sauces. So
Okay.
it's a
Okay.
randomized list. I'm gonna just go with the top 5 that were given, and I'm gonna have you blind rank them 1 to 5, and we'll see how this goes.
All right. Okay.
All right.
I'm game for that. Let's try it.
All right. So Caribbean jerk.
Just from experience, I love jerk chicken, just not really with the chicken wing. I'm going to say that's, I don't know if I want to burn my number 5 already. I'll say number 5. I'm going to say number 5.
Right, that's fine. I think this is a popular one up here in Buffalo. Honey barbecue.
Ooh, that's again. Do I want to burn my number 1 this fast?
This is what's tough about it.
I love a good honey. You know what? I'm gonna go number
Just
1.
do it.
I
Do it.
love a good honey barbecue wing.
All right.
I love it a little spicier, but that's my number 1. I'm gonna say number 1.
All right. Medium. Just like a plain, Frank's and butter. Medium.
4.
Okay.
4.
Blazing Carolina Reaper.
Now, see, if I was in my 20s, I'd say that'd be like number 1.
Changes, yeah.
Or number 2. The fact that I'm in my 40s, it's definitely top 3. I'm going to follow my doctor's advice on this one and say, with my acid reflux, say number 3. But that's a solid choice. I'm going to say number 3.
All right, and then spicy garlic. I guess this would be your number 2.
Yeah, by default. Man, I should have made the Reaper number 2. But I'll go with I'll follow the rules.
All right,
Yeah,
not too
spicy
bad,
garlic
though.
could be number
Okay.
2.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's just the first thing that popped into my head, and I was like, we'll try this. I think you did okay.
I like that. Now, it wouldn't be much of a blind one for you, but how would you rank those? Same ones.
I'm not. I like a little heat, but I don't know about the Carolina Reaper, and I've never really had a Caribbean jerk. I'm assuming it's got some citrus, like pineapple kind of notes to it, with a little bit of heat. I'd probably say medium at the top. Just like a nice classic, a little bit of
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'd say it's just classic. I don't like a ton of spice, so I'd probably say medium as 1. I'd probably put honey barbecue as 2. I'd probably say Caribbean jerk as 3, spicy garlic at 4, and then blazing at 5. I don't get joy out of the flavorless burn on your tongue. I don't know. I think one of my first times at Duff's with my family, there was this guy sitting behind us, and he just kept asking for the hottest spices. And
the suicide wings.
And he just sat there emotionless and was just like, "Do you got anything hotter?" And they would bring something out. He's like, "Yeah, you got anything hotter?" I'm just like, "Dude, what is wrong with you?"
Dude, that's what I mean. Back in our 20s, especially the guys that I was hanging with, it was like the badge of honor. You had to go in, you had to try the hottest wings. You couldn't show any emotion, even though inside you're like, holy cow, what did I do? But you gotta But now that I'm in my 40s, I'm like, okay, I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when your group of friends, whether it's from high school or college, everybody gets together for Thanksgiving, for whatever the holiday that everybody's in town. But like, oh yeah, we're going out here. We're gonna stay out till 2, 3 in the morning. You do that, you get up the next day, you're right as rain. When you try that in your 40s,
Nope, not happening.
you're like out for like, first of all, very rarely do you like, if I'm up later than like 11, it's because I'm at home watching a Bills like Monday night game or Sunday night game. And even then, like staying up till 11 or 12, I'm like, man, I'm going to feel this the next day. So yeah, you'll learn.
Oh yeah. No,
You'll learn.
I've already kind of learned. I don't really go out like much at all. Like if I'm out
Yeah.
late, it's because like we had a late practice, or
Mhm.
like I was working. I take photos for the lacrosse league that I'm in, so like I was there till 10 last night just because that's when the last games ended. But like otherwise, like I'm not going out late. I'm not
No.
doing any of that stuff, and yeah, it would not be good the next day for sure. No, I feel it already.
Very smart, man. All right. My second question, with my season coming up, your season will be coming up soon enough. First and best conditioning drills for a practice. Now, this could be whether you were a coach or whether you were a player. Actually, we'll go on the player side. So as a player, and it could be whatever sport, your worst conditioning drill and your favorite. For me, my favorite, like as a player, I liked running in the what are they called? Where you start at the back, you run in a straight line, you start in the back, and then the back two have to sprint up to the front, and then they keep the pace.
Yeah, I don't.
I forgot what they're called now,
I
but
know. Yeah, I know what they were called. I don't know what
yeah,
you're allowed to call it now.
same here. So we'll just call them backline sprints, whatever we're going to call them. But those, I loved those, especially now we had it where the back two guys had to like break off and basically sprint up, racing each other to the front.
Yeah.
And if you got to the front, you controlled the pace. So I was always that guy that everybody hated, where if I got to the front first, I'm picking up the pace. Like I'm like, all right, we're going. Where you get some of those veteran guys, like they'll get there and they'll be like, all right, this is a snail's pace. Like, let's slow it down. But I those were my favorite as a player. My worst were like, and I think everybody hated these, just wind sprints. Like it was, especially when you got the coach that, like, if you knew, like, all right, we're doing 5 wind sprints. Okay, you can kind of suck it up. You know what's coming. But if it's one of those coaches that just, all right, get on the line. Well, coach, how many are we doing? We're doing them until I tell you to not do them anymore. And it's just like, oh my God. Like everyone, you're like 3, 4, like how many more? How many more? How many more? And for us, it was always, you start at the goal line, up to the 6 box, back, up to the 18, back to half field, and then jog back. And then it was, sometimes you were lucky enough. Back in our day, you were lucky enough, if you were one of the first couple, you'd get a little bit extra rest, but it was usually no more than a minute rest. And then you're back doing it again. And then you're back doing it again. Like I said, sometimes you would do 5 or 6. Sometimes you would do a lot more. Oh, yeah. So those I did not like.
I'll say I haven't had to do them, but my JV lacrosse coach is big into conditioning, and he gets those JV kids working super hard. And he has this thing called the graham cracker. So it's around the football field. You jog the long end, and then you sprint the short ends. And
okay, yeah.
So it'd be a jog, sprint, jog, sprint. I don't know how many of them you're supposed to do, but he says that's the graham cracker. Like somebody else, like he had to do it when he was in high school, and that's what they were called. And so yeah, that can, because I think we had some issues one game, and so the next practice I was like, yeah, we're running. Like I don't normally do a lot of conditioning. I want them to, like, condition themselves through the drills and like the 6-on-6 practices. But I was like, no, we're running. I'm pissed. We're running. So I had them do a couple, and I think I told them to do 3. And it was like after the first one, they were just all completely like done. So I can just see that being just like the worst. I'd say my favorite probably goes back to hockey, and I don't know what it's called, but you would start at one red line, and you basically did circles around each of the 5 face-off dots.
Okay.
So you would start, let's say, in the bottom right. You'd skate up and around, and you had to kind of pivot. So you're skating forwards, and then you got to pivot to go backwards. And then once you do a full lap around that one, then you come to the other one. You figure 8 around that, then go up to the middle circle.
Okay.
And so, yeah, you're working on your speed in between, but also your ability to, turn in a short radius and flip your hips and go backwards through the second half of it. I always enjoyed those. I thought those were fun. And, being on wheels, you skate fast, but you can glide through it as well. So it helped a little bit. But it was a fun little conditioning exercise.
Okay. I was going to say I like that. And I know for your graham cracker, we always did for soccer, I'll do jog, sprint, and walk. So they'll start at the corner flag. They'll jog up to midfield, sprint from midfield to the corner flag, and then walk the goal line, and then do the other thing back.
Okay.
So something similar. I just called it jog, sprint, walk.
Yeah.
And again, on the hot days, you do a couple of those. Those can suck. And those always stunk as a athlete too when we did them.
Oh, yeah.
All right. One more question. What do you got for us, Andrew?
All right. Let's go with. And no, I was gonna say something about coaching a different sport, but I feel like I've asked you that question in a previous interview. Have I asked you before if you were to coach any other sport that you don't normally?
You know what? We've done that before, but it's always a good question.
Let's
I feel like
if you were to coach
absolutely.
any other sport than the ones that you currently coach or ever have coached, like something completely different, what would you get into?
That's interesting because I think I mentioned this. I don't know if it was to you or somebody else, but I mean, I've especially early on as a phys ed teacher, sometimes you got to coach sports that you don't like know anything of. So I've coached swimming and diving. I've coached softball. I've coached track and field. I've coached basketball. I've coached soccer, obviously. I've coached a lot of sports, some that I know, some that I haven't known. I coached tennis. A sport that I think my answer last time was football, but I'm going to go something different because I think every coach would love the chance to coach a pro football league just because the NFL is so popular. It's just, I think that's I think typically where the coach gets more of, I don't know if you want to call it notoriety or just because it's a lot more play calling involved. I'm going to go something a little different. I'd actually love to coach. I'd love to coach hockey, ice hockey. My brother was the hockey player in our family. He was the goaltender. So it was funny, like when you said like ice hockey is really expensive or whatever. My brother played goal and he was pretty good. So usually for those travel teams, hockey goaltenders were a hot commodity. So it was usually, all right, well, we'll come in, we'll waive some of the fees, we'll give you this. So that was really the only reason why he was able to play hockey for as long as he did. Because a lot of times, I mean, he had high level travel teams where it was, $1,000 or $2,000 for the season. They needed a goaltender, but like, it was almost like, come here, we'll give you a full scholarship. Like you'll play for free.
Mm-hmm.
All you got to do is pay a little bit of ice practice time for the rink time. So that's the only reason why he played. But I love the sport. My father played it when he was growing up. He was a goaltender. Like I said, my brother was a goaltender. You put me on skates or rollerblades, I look like a baby deer that was just born. I mean, I could barely stand up. But I always loved it. To this day, I love the game. Wish the Sabres were a little better, but who knows? Yeah. So I'm gonna say hockey.
Okay.
How about you?
I was trying to think of some of those like out there sports. Some of the ones that are maybe like on the rise or whatnot, but I don't know. I think I'd be interested in coaching volleyball. I enjoyed volleyball. I played it in middle school. Got cut from the JV team, but it's just always been something that's like fun. You're at the park with your friends. You get a little match going on the sand. I hopped into a league with some of my colleagues, over at like I think it was Manor Lanes. That was fun. And it's just always a sport I've been intrigued by and interested in. So yeah, I think that'd be interesting to dive into the world of volleyball coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes, like, I know when I was coaching some of, especially swimming and diving, and I knew nothing about swimming and diving. I think that's part of the fun of it too, where I literally, and this is how old I am. Wasn't pre-internet, but I couldn't go out there and Google anything. Like, I literally ran to the library and found about 2 or 3 books on swimming and diving and learned everything that I could in a very short amount of time. But I think for me too, some of those sports that I coached and I didn't know much about or didn't know anything about, they were some of the most, looking back on it, they were some of the most memorable to coach, because a lot of it was, I wanted to make sure I stayed just above the knowledge of the kids that I had to. Like, every day I had to learn a little more. Every day I had to learn more, because my athletes would kind of catch up to me. So for me, it definitely, especially early on as a young coach, a young phys ed teacher in my early 20s, it was almost trial by fire, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I felt that same way about swimming, and it was I wasn't the head coach, so that took some pressure off it. But I tried to learn what I could. It's just fun being around something different, just getting to know the athletes and just developing that team camaraderie together.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a learning experience. And that's one thing I tell my kids all the time, even in a sport like soccer, where, I know a lot about the sport. I don't know everything about the sport. But it's, sometimes where, you're going to have a day, the athlete's going to have a day where they learn a lot. I'm going to have a day where I learn a lot. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, that's again part of the beauty of sports. There's a little for everything. Well, Andrew, I mean, we had a great conversation here. I feel like we're just scratching the surface. So as I tell you, this is your 3rd time in coming on. I think it was the best. You have an open invite. Anytime you want to come back, just send me a text. In fact, this one, I think I got you on because you made a little Facebook comment, and I was like, hey, you know what? Why don't we talk about that on the show? So, open invite anytime you want to come back on. Always a pleasure having you on. Make sure you guys check us out on YouTube, on Spotify, on X, Twitter, whatever it's called now. Coach Larry's podcast at Coach Larry 11. And as always, tune in next week for another exciting episode of Coach Larry's podcast. And go Bills.